Okay, my dudes, we should be live. This is going to be a very important mock draft because I think this is the first mock draft that you're actually going to find on YouTube where it's after the Cam Akers injury. And we have talked about this with the live stream we did yesterday with the Cam Akers injury, but it's going to be so important to go through and not only change your ranking of Darrell Henderson, because of course Darrell Henderson is going to be the biggest mover, but we are actually releasing our draft guide yesterday on Patreon. And once the Cam Akers injury happened, I kind of had to take a step back. I had to say, okay, let's wait. Let's give it 3 or 4, maybe 5 days, and I can get it out then because this changes the entire landscape of fantasy drafts. When you take away a stud running back, and yes, Darrell Henderson's replacing him, but Darrell Henderson isn't going to be a running back one in fantasy, newsflash, then you actually have to go out there. You have to make adjustments with your entire draft strategy because the running back supply and demand is a little bit different here. So before we get that draft guide out over there on Patreon, which I promise you at the very latest, it's going to be out on the 25th, I want to make sure we're hopping in some real drafts. I want to make sure we understand exactly how the running back value is changing compared to these wide receivers so we can feel very confident in that draft guide and those official rankings that I'm getting out to everyone. Now, of course, we've already made an adjustment to the rankings over there on Patreon, but before we put them out in the draft guide where they are finalized, I really want to make sure that we have a solid set. So please understand that. Now, let me go out there. Let me send out a link in our Discord chat to let people know that we are live. And of course, if you want to hop in this mock draft, make sure you go shoot me a DM on Patreon ASAP. And yeah, let me go through, pull up the live chat real quick. Hopefully, the mic is all good. Okay, so it looks like the microphone is fine. Okay, so now let's pull up Patreon because I'm sure that we are going to have some DMs waiting for us over there. And guys, please, if you have not for whatever reason, go down there, drop a like on the live stream, subscribe to the channel. I mean, we are about to be moving across the country to a new studio where I'm going to be live streaming literally every single day. I cannot wait until the football season. It's going to be fantastic. And yeah, make sure you're dropping those likes. Make sure you are subscribing to the channel. And let me get y'all a link out to Patreon real quick, just so you don't have to leave the YouTube app to actually shoot me that DM. Okay. So let's go through, send this out. And thank you for everybody who's already dropped a like. I see that we are closing in on 20 likes in the live stream with only like 35 people in here because this is probably the earliest live stream we have ever done in terms of making a mock draft. But a big thing is, like I said, moving across the country tomorrow, gonna have to pack up, get everything out the door by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So yeah, I have a lot to do today. We actually made 12 Patreon podcasts yesterday. We had so many people joining the flock over there on Patreon. So my schedule has been hectic. Okay, but anyway, let me pull up Patreon real quick. And it looks like we already have enough DMs to fill this mock draft. So it's literally just going to be 30 seconds. And I'm very sorry if you shot me a DM and you were not able to get in because it looks like off the top of my head, maybe we have about like 15 DMs that we have to get out. So if you do some quick math, this is a 12-man startup. I mean, not everybody is going to be able to get in. But okay, so Jack, Highlight, Nathan, Winston, Nick, JJ, Ron, Joe, Richard. I'm sending everybody who shot me a DM on Patreon a link. And essentially, it's just going to be the first 11 people who hit that button, get in. Okay, so Joe, and I'm also sending it out in the order that we got those DMs for everybody that subscribed to the channel, everybody that has the notification bell on, so they know exactly when we are going to be doing this. Okay. So let's get this, and please just give me 1 second, guys. I promise you we're going to get this mock draft underway in about 30 seconds. Trust me, I want to get this through as quickly as we can just because, I mean, I have a lot to do. I have to make 2 videos for the Dynasty channel. I'm assuming that we're probably going to have more Patreon podcasts that we need to be making today. Okay, so James got you. Derek got you. Okay, so it looks like we are about to be filled. Let me zoom out. No idea why Sleeper zoomed in like that. Let's switch over the screens. And okay, it looks like I was dumb enough to not set up the draft beforehand. So let me do that right now. Okay, so it looks like we are set up for the mock. And yeah, looks like we have that entire screen full and this draft is full. Let's start it off. Let's try to see where we are going to be having I almost said Cam Akers, but of course Cam Akers isn't getting drafted here. Let's see where Darrell Henderson goes in this mock draft, and let's see what changes with the running back position, because I mean, this is definitely going to be very useful for us changing our official rankings, because if you pull up Patreon right now, I have updated the positional rankings where we slid Darrell Henderson up to running back 25. Now, tomorrow in the video, I'm going to talk about exactly why I don't think he should go any higher than that. But we updated the positional rankings. I still need to work on the overall rankings, though, because like I said, Akers leaving changes the entire landscape for us. And you have 6 running backs going off the board right away. Now, we're at the 108, and the reason I chose the 108 is because I think it's a perfect cutoff to where, I mean, the elite guys, the top 5 running backs that you're really wanting in fantasy drafts, they are no longer going to be available, and that's starting to be the range where you maybe consider going wide receiver. But given the Akers injury, I will say before the Akers injury, when we would be more comfortable with the running backs that were going to make it back to us in the 2nd and 3rd round, I would be going Tyreek Hill here. But now that we have that injury, I think the running back options in the 2nd and 3rd round are going to be a little bit worse, and you're going to find that throughout the entire draft. So instead, I think we actually have to hit running back here. This is going to be a gross part of the draft, and this is exactly why I chose this draft position, and I'm assuming that this team isn't going to look fantastic at the end of the day. But let's go out there and let's draft Austin Ekeler at the 108. Now, Austin Ekeler, the reason I'm taking him over Nick Chubb is simply this is a PPR format. You look at Austin Ekeler, we've talked about this all offseason now, the most improved offensive line in the NFL in Los Angeles, at the same time, the best quarterback that he's ever played with, and you looked at the production over the past few years, and he's already had a very high floor. But yeah, now we see the first wide receiver go off at the 111 in Tyreek Hill. Obviously, the wide receiver 1 this upcoming season. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get in the 2nd round coming back to us, because I would imagine we probably are going to end up going wide receiver unless something crazy happens. But yeah, okay, so Travis Kelce goes at the 112. I think Travis Kelce, we currently have him ranked as the 12th player overall, but once we update those overall rankings, I mean, Cam Akers is going to be dropping down. Travis Kelce may be sliding up to 11, but it really depends where we're going to find the rest of the running back position. Okay, so let's see. Let's try to hypothesize what we're going to be looking at the 205. Okay, so wide receiver, we still have the elite options in Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley. If you go over and pull up our rankings and tiers, those are going to be the guys that are at the very top of that. Obviously, every tight end besides Travis Kelce is available, not even considering the quarterback position until we get to the very end of the 3rd round. And then maybe I can consider drafting a Patrick Mahomes if we decided to go Kelce, decided to go Tyreek Hill at the very beginning. But I think the main thing we want to be looking at is mainly just running back, wide receiver. Antonio Gibson goes off. Antonio Gibson was definitely our target here with how elite of a ceiling that he has. And now we're in a difficult position, because before the Cam Akers injury, I think what we would actually be doing here is we'd be going wide receiver, most likely with one of DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley. But since the injury, I think now we may have to end up sliding up these running backs. And if we pull up our rankings right now, I mean, the top guys are going to be Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So it's really, do we want one of these 3 guys? Because I can guarantee you the running back position is going to look very gross by the time we get to the 3rd round. Do we go with an elite wide receiver? Now, like I said, we haven't really had the experience in drafts where Cam Akers has been out for the entire season. It's going to change things. And because of that, I think we test it out. We go running back here. Even if I don't love the value, we are going to be going with Joe Mixon. If we were guaranteed that Aaron Rodgers was going to be in Green Bay, then we would end up going with Aaron Jones. But I think what you're going to find is I think those running backs like a J.K. Dobbins, a DeAndre Swift, a David Montgomery, they're going to be sliding up once we get to the 3rd, 4th round, where I really don't want to look at the running back options available to us later in the draft. So I think we go Mixon here. It could be a mistake. That's why we are doing this mock draft. And I mean, we are the first people out here doing this, trying to show how to help. Now, Aaron Jones goes off the board as well. DeAndre Hopkins at the 207. So please let me know what y'all think, guys, because your opinion is very valuable, especially when we have a massive change like this, because I really want to make sure that we have that draft guide perfected, because we actually had people going out there and just using our rankings from the draft guide at pretty much every position in mock drafts. And they were sending me screenshots of the teams that they got at the end. And I was like, okay, this is perfect. I love the roster construction for all these teams. I like how we have the positional values stacked up in the overall rankings. But now we have to make changes. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to talk about this, but please let me know how drastic you think the changes should actually be. Okay, so now let's pull up the chat real quick because I had to minimize it for something. Okay, J.K. Dobbins going at the 210. Yeah, so J.K. Dobbins was a running back that was going, probably falling to us at the 308 if we were not looking at this injury. So interesting to see Dobbins go at the 210 here. And I think maybe that makes our decision of going with a Joe Mixon at the 205 that much better, to be completely honest. Because if we're talking about Joe Mixon, this is a running back that with no Giovanni Bernard, he's going to see a massive uptick in the amount of targets that he's getting per game. I mean, you've essentially seen Giovanni Bernard get 4 targets a game throughout his entire NFL career in Cincinnati. So that leaving the offense is going to make a massive impact. And yeah, now J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift sliding up here. Now they are going ahead of wide receivers in Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, which is crazy to think about. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you're sitting here in your Dreamville and you're getting Christian McCaffrey, Calvin Ridley to start your draft, I mean, you are jumping up and down with excitement. That is a fantastic start. I think even with the Cam Akers injury, I'd be a little bit hesitant to draft Dobbins and Swift here. But a big thing is when you're drafting at the end like that, you have to look at the players that are going to be available in the 3rd round as well. And I'm sure they looked at the wide receiver rankings and saw Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, and Allen Robinson. And they said, you know what? I'm fine with any of those guys. After running back, we are going to see a significant fall off. So maybe that's why they decided to go with Swift and Dobbins here, even if it looked like a little bit of a reach. But now I think we're probably going to see a pretty big wide receiver run upcoming. Okay, so James says, Mason, for the Patreon, if I sub today, do I have to pay today and again on August 1st, or do I not get charged until August 1st? I don't understand the Patreon billing. My man, if you get double charged on Patreon, literally just shoot me a DM. I'll refund you for one of the charges. That's simple. I can't give you an exact answer on how that's going to work. I don't handle too much of the Patreon billing, but I mean, you have the history clearly, and there's an easy refund button for me. And of course, I would be more than willing to do that, my man. Okay, so Bobby says, should I take Robert Woods as a keeper in the 5th round, 10-team PPR? My man, I actually had before the injury, Robert Woods ranked as our wide receiver 12 overall. So I've been really high on Robert Woods, and I think you actually have to slide his ranking up slightly given the fact that this team may skew a little more pass happy. I'm not going to be making drastic changes there. I think based on the fact that he was already at the top of the tier, we possibly keep Robert Woods there, slide up Cooper Kupp because we were a little lower on Cooper Kupp. I believe we initially had him as wide receiver 21. So that's a change that we're going to have to make. But Robert Woods, Kupp, I love their outlook for this upcoming season. So yeah, just like we predicted, we are seeing this wide receiver run go off the board here. I mean, these are fantastic wide receivers. All these guys have the potential to be wide receiver 1s. And I know A.J. Brown at the 305, that's going to be the furthest you really ever see A.J. Brown fall. Of course, he takes a slight hit with Julio Jones coming in, while the efficiency should go up for A.J. Brown. We know that Julio Jones coming in is going to take targets away. At the same time, no Arthur Smith is a little concerning with what we may see from this Tennessee Titans offense. So A.J. Brown at the 305, I think that is fantastic value. Now, Let's Go Blue actually has both Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown to start this draft. So I would imagine that Ryan Tannehill is going to be a very, very high target of his later on. Okay, so Allen Robinson going. So at the 308, we go across. And to be completely honest, I am not considering taking a quarterback even in the 3rd round. If it's Patrick Mahomes, I can't do it just because the quarterback value that's going to be available later on. Now, I will say, if you draft a Tyreek Hill, if you draft a Travis Kelce, if you draft a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you want to get a Patrick Mahomes stack in the middle to the late 3rd round, that's when I'm fine doing so. But when we have Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon to start this draft, we have not drafted a single wide receiver yet. I think the idea of going out there and drafting Patrick Mahomes would be very bad for this team. Okay, so also we just passed 50 likes on the live stream. Thank you so much for everybody who's dropped that like. And real quick, before we are up on the clock, because we are live streaming, because we have so many things going on, I really want to pull up our actual rankings because our rankings are going to help us out a lot here. I've worked on them days and days and days and days, hours and hours and hours and hours. So of course I can't memorize them and have them on the top of my head. I know the players that are in certain tiers, but I really just want to make sure that we're looking at it overall. Going to be going to the positional rankings, however, just because we know that everything's really changing. And it's going to be interesting to see where Darrell Henderson ends up going in this draft. Okay, but if we pull up our rankings here, I mean, there is a clear wide receiver that is our top wide receiver available. I don't think he's a fantastic value or anything. And in a regular league, I would not be drafting him here because there was a solid chance that he would fall to the 405. But because everybody in this draft is on Patreon, because everybody in this draft has access to my rankings, I really think that there's no chance he falls back to us at the 405. So we are going to go off the board, take Robert Woods. I know that's going to surprise a lot of people. We're taking Robert Woods over Terry McLaurin. And a big thing with Woods here is I'm expecting Matthew Stafford compared to Ryan Fitzmagic to be a significantly better quarterback. I'm expecting Sean McVay compared to Ron Rivera being a significantly better head coach. I think that you're actually going to have the Los Angeles Rams take a significant step forward this upcoming season. And at the same time, Robert Woods has already been way more productive over the past 3 years than Terry McLaurin was last year in his second season. And I know Terry McLaurin, he was only in his second year last year, but at the same time, that was a player that stayed all 5 years at Ohio State. So I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to take some massive step up, and especially when you consider that they're having Curtis Samuel come in, they're having Diami Brown come in, and yes, Ryan Fitzmagic could be the best quarterback that he's ever played with. But at the same time, targets are going to be taken away, and I'm not necessarily willing to go out there and just assume that Terry McLaurin all of a sudden is going to be that much more productive than Robert Woods when Robert Woods has a way better situation. Okay, so now E-Rock says, which is the best keeper value? DK in the 3rd, Swift in the 4th, Chase Edmonds in the 11th, or James Robinson in the 15th. Definitely going to be down between DK Metcalf, DeAndre Swift. You have to understand how your league values wide receiver versus running back. Okay, so here we do have Patrick Mahomes going at the 312 to Pristine Icon, someone that's always out here in these mock drafts. I mean, we have a lot of the regular people out here in these mock drafts. Pristine Icon, roster baiter, no capsules. Highlight is someone that joined the flock yesterday, so I'm sure we're going to see him in a lot more mock drafts going forward. Icklewick, Nathan Bierman. Yeah, those are just some of the names that I've noticed are in almost every single mock draft with us. So Sanders at the 311, I do think that's okay value when you decide to go wide receiver to start your draft, especially when we have Cam Akers out for the year. But let me know what y'all are thinking. Let me know, especially if you're watching this as a video later on. I mean, your opinion is so valuable right now. Please let me know where you think you should be going with Darrell Henderson in fantasy drafts, because, I mean, it is not settled at all. Like I said, he is my running back 25. I doubt I draft him that often, and that's mainly because with Darrell Henderson, I mean, they're bringing someone in. I can guarantee you it. With Darrell Henderson, he's the only running back on the roster that was not drafted in the 7th round or was an undrafted free agent. So essentially, that team has nobody behind Darrell Henderson. Don't try to give me some crap about how Xavier Jones is actually a nice, sneaky pickup. No, that's not the case. They're bringing someone in. The question is, who do they bring in? Do they bring in Kareem Hunt? Do they bring in James Robinson? Now, that would kill Darrell Henderson, where instead, if they go out there and they get someone, just say, like a Le'Veon Bell, like a Todd Gurley, at that point, Darrell Henderson still is going to be a low-end running back too. So I'm still kind of just sitting here going, running back 25 is going to be where I'm ranking Darrell Henderson. If I pull up my Patreon rankings right now, let's see exactly the range he is ranked around. So we have Darrell Henderson ranked directly behind Myles Gaskin, Kareem Hunt, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs. We have him directly ahead of Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds, James Robinson, Trey Sermon. So let me know if y'all think I am too far off there with Darrell Henderson. But here, I think based on the fact that we have no Akers, we have a very strong pick with Chris Carson. Now, if I pull up my rankings, Carson is our running back 18. The next best available running backs for us, we're going to be Travis Etienne at 21, but we have Travis Etienne in tier 7. We have Chris Carson in tier 6. So I think we actually go Carson. This is not going to be a regular draft you see from us, because a lot of the drafts we are going to be completing this offseason and leading into the season, you're going to find that I'll take a running back at the very top. And then in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, I'm going wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. And you're probably going to be screaming at me, laughing at me, going, Mason, how's the second best running back on your team, Kenyon Drake? You're toast. And it's usually because when you're in rounds 2, 3, 4, historically, wide receivers have been much better bets, and I would rather bet on the fact that I can go out there and find the next James Robinson, Myles Gaskin on the waiver wire, and that could propel my team to being a championship roster. But Chris Carson at the 405 is too good a value. I would have drafted him here before the Cam Akers injury, and I think when we do have to raise up the value of these running backs just slightly, Chris Carson is still a fantastic pick at the 405. Okay, guys, if you have not already, listen up. Listen closely. Go fix your life. Go drop a like on the video. I don't know what else we need to tell you. Please go drop a like. It helps us out so much. We're live streaming at 10 a.m. I'm going to make so many videos for the next few days. Today, I actually am having to leave across the country at 5 a.m. We made 12 podcasts on Patreon yesterday. I am grinding about as hard as I can. Trust me. Okay, so Aaron says Carson over Julio Jones, question mark. Yes, I would definitely be going with Chris Carson over Julio Jones. But after our Carson selection, we do see some more wide receivers going off the board, which, to be completely honest, you don't necessarily want to see wide receivers going off the board after you start 3 running backs. A big thing with why we start Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Chris Carson is you're kind of hoping that other teams begin to reach on running backs at the end of the 4th, the beginning of the 5th, and they push that wide receiver value down to us. So the fact that these teams are continuing to hammer in these wide receivers in Mike Evans, Julio Jones, DJ Moore, CeeDee Lamb, that's not a great sign for us. I mean, at that point, you're kind of going back, you're going, okay, maybe we should have drafted CeeDee Lamb because, I mean, it's going to be a rough scene if we get to the 5th, 6th round and we possibly have to, I don't want to say draft Travis Etienne because I think we kind of lock ourselves into maybe having to go wide receiver there, but the player we would be getting is a whole lot worse. Okay, so my girlfriend was stupid. She left her phone in the living room and I guess had her alarm on and now it's going off. She's walking the dog right now. So please, guys, literally it'll take 30 seconds. Let me go over real quick. Let me go to the living room, turn that alarm off because it's going to drive me extremely crazy if we have to go through this draft. Listening to that while I'm gone, make sure you drop that like. Okay, I am sorry about that, my dudes. But anyway, that's going to be so much better. And we have our second quarterback going off the board at the 411 here. So that's pretty far down for Josh Allen. But to be completely honest, I'm going to be lower than consensus on quarterbacks in this range, where if you're going through and you're following the rankings, most likely in your redraft league, if you're playing in a casual league especially, you're not going to be in a range where you can even get a Josh Allen because most of the time he's going to be going in the 3rd round. And I currently have him ranked, I believe, as a late 4th, early 5th round draft pick. So I like the value on Josh Allen. I'll say if you're going to draft a quarterback, I think it is fine to do so there. Now, who took Stephon Diggs? Okay, so Stephon Diggs went at the 310. So I guess Josh Allen could have been in play at the 403, but not necessarily something you would have been very excited about. Okay, so now let's go through. Okay, so Chase, I mean, this was a bad turn of events after taking Chris Carson at the 405. I mean, this wide receiver run going here is definitely going to hurt who we are looking at upcoming. I mean, Myles Gaskin at the 501, really love that value at this point. So yeah, there are still some intriguing names. We just simply don't know who we're going to have access to. Now, tight end, possibly we decide to go with an Andrews, Hawkinson, if we don't like any of the wide receivers here. And if we're going quarterback, a big thing is, I mean, we don't necessarily want to be reaching for any of these quarterbacks in a Kyler Murray, a Lamar Jackson, I mean, a Dak Prescott. Russell Wilson would be intriguing given the Chris Carson stack, but at the same time, I mean, when you're drafting Chris Carson, you're kind of betting on the Seattle Seahawks going out there and being a run-heavy team, so I don't love the idea of going through and getting Russell Wilson on that squad. Matthew Stafford, not going to be in play for a very long time. Joe Mixon with Joe Burrow, not going to be in play for a very long time. Austin Eckler, I guess we can consider Justin Herbert in the 6th, 7th round, but quarterback's going to be off my board in the 5th round. We're really not going to be considering anybody considering this roster construction so far. Okay, so now let's scroll through. Best available running backs are Kareem Hunt, James Robinson, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. Best available wide receivers are Lockett, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr. You have pretty much all the elite quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And you have both Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson as the top tight ends that stand out. Now, it is very interesting that Darrell Henderson is yet to go off the board. Now, like I said, I assume that Darrell Henderson would honestly be drafted by now. I mean, he is lower than this in my own personal rankings. Now, gosh dang it. T. Higgins at the 504. Nathan, I hate you, my man. I mean, this has been one killer draft. I don't necessarily think we love George Kittle at the 209, but Barkley in the 1st, Thomas in the 3rd, Lamb in the 4th, Higgins in the 5th. I mean, that's a very high upside squad. At the same time, it has a low floor given the fact that Saquon Barkley is a risky asset this upcoming season. But we know Barkley has Christian McCaffrey type upside. So that is one hell of a start here. I'm pissed that you took T. Higgins there in the 5th. Okay, so let's see what people are saying. Joseph says, I almost picked Josh Allen at the 503 to stack with Diggs, but I didn't like the value. Yes, sir. I think you actually made the right call of avoiding that Josh Allen selection, given the fact that when you're going to be back up here at the 510 instead of the 403, you're going to be looking at a running back situation where you can go Hunt, James Robinson, Javonte Williams, or a quarterback situation where you could go Kyler, Lamar Jackson. And I think those quarterbacks are a lot closer to Josh Allen than those running backs are with the other guys. But Darrell Henderson finally goes off the board at the 506. So let's count how many running backs went ahead of him. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, so he goes as the running back 23, very close to where we currently have him ranked. Now, I think in the majority of casual leagues, though, you're actually going to find that Darrell Henderson most likely going to jump both Travis Etienne and Myles Gaskin in ADP. I'd imagine that he's somewhere between Myles Gaskin and Chris Carson for a bunch of people. If you're getting him at the 506, I'm fine with the value. Don't necessarily love it, but I understand it. Now, Ayuk goes, another wide receiver that we definitely would like to have. Now, oh my gosh, now this is making our Chris Carson pick look horrendous, because I definitely think if we would have known this many wide receivers would have gone off the draft board, we would have decided to take CeeDee Lamb at the 405. But now if we are up and we are looking at our rankings, I believe Tyler Lockett is actually our highest ranked wide receiver. And we do have Chris Carson, so we're kind of betting on the Seattle Seahawks offense. I don't necessarily love getting that kind of correlation in. At running back, Kareem Hunt's going to be there, but we already started with 3 RBs. I think that it's kind of just overkill when we can only start 2 in the starting lineup, 2 in the flex, so you can only start 4 at the very most. So I don't want to be spending 4 out of my first 5 picks on running back unless we think it's insane value. And if Kareem Hunt was at the 605, yes, we would take him. But here I think we go Tyler Lockett, and oh my God, this is a bad start to the draft. I think we made a mistake going Chris Carson at the 405. You live and learn. But, I mean, this was a brutal wide receiver run that we saw leading us to go Tyler Lockett at the 508. Okay, Holden says, I got Najee Harris in the second round. Is that good? My man, if I go over there real quick, pull up my rankings on what we actually have with Najee Harris. We have him ranked in the second round, but I believe we have him a little bit lower than he's going to end up going. So we have him ranked as our 14th best running back. We have him directly behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb. So, I mean, if you're in a situation where all of a sudden I don't even want to say that we are liking Najee Harris in the second round, to be honest. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're getting him in the middle of the second or you're getting him in the back half of the second, yes, I love that value. But I think the majority of the time, you're actually going to find Najee Harris at the late first, early second round turn. And I'm going to have a very hard time taking him over Tyreek Hill, taking him over Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. So it's going to be interesting. I would love to see exactly where you got him. Okay, so TJ Hawkinson at the 510 as the 4th tight end off the board. Javonte Williams at the 511. I love that Javonte Williams selection. Okay, also, guys, if you have not already, go down there, drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel. I mean, we are going to be moving across the country tomorrow. We are going to be setting up a new studio, and we should be able to premiere it either the 24th or the 25th. Now, we're not going to have it completely set up. We're going to have the first main sign set up. At least I am praying that we are going to. So maybe it's a little bit of a letdown until we can continue to get those pieces in there and we can continue to build that studio up. But I'm just excited to get out of my bedroom for the time being. Okay, Diamond says, in a 14-team PPR league, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the 213 good value, Mason? My man, I love that value. Okay, so Laviska, Juju, a couple of our guys going at the 601, the 602. And now I really want to consider taking Kyler Murray here, but a big thing is, I mean, if we would have had DeAndre Hopkins, we would have considered taking Kyler. Okay, but he goes off the board anyway. And that wide receiver right now, if we pull it up, God, this is disgusting. I think we actually maybe have to go with Mark Andrews here. Now, if we go pull up our wide receiver rankings, I mean, I believe Deontay Johnson actually already off the board. Adam Thielen off. Is Kenny Golladay our highest ranked wide receiver? No, Kenny Golladay is drafted. Robbie Anderson is currently our highest ranked wide receiver at wide receiver 30. But the difference between him and a bunch of these other guys for me is not that large. So I think we probably go with Mark Andrews here. I don't love the value in the 6th round, but the thing is we're kind of picking in a dead spot. There's nothing that stands out to me to be a fantastic selection. I mean, at running back, both Javonte Williams and Kareem Hunt go. At wide receiver, our targets were going to be Laviska Shenault. So I think we just go with Mark Andrews. We kind of suck it up, take him at the 605. It is what it is. Hopefully we see the offense bounce back. Hopefully we see it back at the 2019 levels. Now, Lamar Jackson does go at the 606. And a big thing is I just really like the stack potential that we have later on in the draft, potentially getting Justin Herbert, potentially getting Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson. I think any of those guys would be fine for us. So that's a big reason why we're not taking Lamar in the 6th. I mean, we could possibly get Joe Burrow down here in the 11th round, which would be fantastic, or Matthew Stafford maybe even later than that. Okay, Celtics says, why so low on Henderson? He was more efficient than Akers last year. He has less competition for touches, and the coaching staff has already said he's going to be more involved in the passing game. My man, tomorrow I have an in-depth video where I go through, I look at Darrell Henderson all through college. I look at what he's done exactly in the NFL when he's been given opportunity, and I talk about what I think is going to happen going forward with the Rams situation. So please just make sure you're subscribed, and I promise you that 20-minute video that's coming out tomorrow is going to be able to explain why I am so low on Darrell Henderson, way better than I can do right now on the live stream. Okay, so now let's go through the rest of the position. Okay, so after we decide to pass on wide receiver here, we have Lamar and Mike Davis going off the board, which is interesting. I mean, if we go through and we look at this draft so far, I mean, Al Johnson has a very intriguing start where he's gone 3 running backs. He has an elite tight end and an elite quarterback, but he has yet to take a wide receiver. Then you have a lot of other teams that have already tripled up on wide receivers, which is usually what I want to do by now. I usually think that getting 3 wide receivers, just going wide receiver in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th is the most optimal way to attack fantasy drafts historically. But in this draft, they went a little too low. The value was never necessarily there at wide receiver, so we were kind of stuck in the dead zone. But now, I mean, I am just extremely jealous of all these teams right here that were able to capture that wide receiver value later on in the draft. Possibly what we should have done, to be completely honest, is if we would have, instead of taking Joe Mixon in the 2nd, we would have gone with DeAndre Hopkins. We would have been in a spot where we could have started Eckler, Hopkins, Woods, Carson, and then in the 5th, instead of having to reach on Tyler Lockett, we could have either taken our favorite value between Javonte Williams and Kareem Hunt. So if we walk our way back through the process of this mock draft so far, I think our initial mistake was expecting the running back value to rise up more than it actually did, given the Cam Akers injury. I think our mistake was drafting Joe Mixon over DeAndre Hopkins. That's something that we definitely need to take note of going forward. And this is why I want to be getting these drafts out there. I'm going to hop in to some real money drafts after this. Not going to be able to stream them. I'm going to be doing them as I do research for videos so we can make the videos. And at the same time, I can feel comfortable with the overall rankings that we're putting out there on the draft guide. So we really understand the optimal roster construction after the running back landscape has changed. Okay, so now let's go through Devontae Smith, Robbie Anderson, Odell, Cortland Sutton. So we have another run on wide receivers, and Justin Herbert, a quarterback that we would have potentially been targeting in the 7th round, does go as well. Now that Justin Herbert selection does stack up with Keenan Allen. So now you actually have Dreamville here with a fantastic start. I mean, I can't imagine a better start than getting Christian McCaffrey in the 1st, doubling up on running back with Myles Gaskin in the 5th, and then going through and getting 5 wide receivers to go along with it. I am extremely jealous. I mean, you have a much better mock draft than I do so far. Okay, Chase Claypool at the 702. Okay, so I see Nicholas is saying rank my team, 10-team PPR. I mean, I'm very sorry. Hopefully someone else can do that for you in a live chat, but because there are 300 people here, I really can't be doing team rankings or team breakdowns as we go through this mock draft. I do them every day on Patreon. I mean, I actually did 12 of them yesterday on Patreon. So of course, if you want to support the show, I'd be happy to get that out for you in a personalized podcast. But for the live stream, I definitely can't be spending the time doing that. Okay, so now if we were looking at the 7th round, I mean, God, I just hate how this went, because a big thing is when you only have 2 wide receivers so far, it would be fine if this was a league format where you started 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex spots. At that point, I'd be fine with it. But when you have to start 3 wide receivers, it definitely changes how you want to construct your roster. So I hate the idea of not having that 3rd guy that we feel comfortable about. Okay, so now let's go through Chase Edmonds at the 704. I'm trying to figure out how on YouTube I can actually pull up, like, I think they call it like the live control room. I have no idea what it is. It's something that I definitely need to be testing out more just because I know that a lot of other people do it. You can do cool things like turn it to subscriber only in the chat, but I just cannot figure it out for the life of me. Okay, so Chase Edmonds at the 704. I definitely do like that Chase Edmonds value. And I just saw that we passed 25.4 thousand subscribers. So that is absolutely massive. Thank you, my dudes. I'm trying to figure out if I can just change this stream to subscriber only in the chat. That way I can make sure that I am doing a better job at filtering in those questions, because when there are so many of them, it's just really hard for me to actually go through and do that. Okay, perfect. We were actually able to change that to subscriber only. Okay, I think we did that. And I'm sorry, guys. Bear with me. I just want to make sure that we are getting everything out here that we would want. Live direct. Okay, I think that we should be good overall. I just wanted to make sure we are changing that. Okay, and can I see the chat here? Yes, I can also see the chat. Okay, so Kenyon Drake at the 705. Kenyon Drake, I think that's a little bit too rich for him. I actually think that Drake's a fantastic value in fantasy drafts right now, given the fact that he gets $11 million guaranteed. You're going to expect him to have a passing down role on this offense regardless. And we know if anything were to happen to Josh Jacobs, that's a player that can step into 3-down usage. But at the 705, I think that's a little too rich. I love him whenever we're getting him in like the 11th round of drafts, but in the 7th, I'm not going to be able to do that with Drake. Okay, okay, Ty says, I've never heard a fantasy expert value a quarterback running back stack before. I actually have a video coming out on stacks very soon. And a big thing is, if you're looking at quarterback running back stacks, the only time that you want to be making those is when you have a pass catching running back, when you can capitalize on the fact that the overall offense is going to be highly productive. And at the same time, you can try to capture those running back targets at the same time with both players. So like I said, in the case of a Chris Carson, a Russell Wilson, I don't necessarily like making that stack, because when you have a Chris Carson, you're betting on that team to be run heavy. And when you have a Russell Wilson, you're betting on that team to kind of unlock the pass, where we don't necessarily have that same luxury of just avoiding getting that stack. When you draft Tyler Lockett, you kind of put yourself in a tough position. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Okay, so Deebo Samuel up here. Let's go through. Let's look at where we are going to be going. So like I said, I mean, I don't like the idea of drafting Russell Wilson on the same team that we have Chris Carson, given the fact that we're kind of betting on that offense to do two separate things there. So I think what we need to do is we need to look if there's any wide receiver value that we actually like, because we desperately need wide receiver here. So Odell is gone. So we're just sliding down our rankings right now, trying to find the best player available. And our highest ranked wide receiver, and I actually think he fits this roster, is going to be Will Fuller. But before we draft him, let's just make sure we're not missing out on any other value that we are seeing. Okay, so yeah, no, I think it's either comes down to Russell Wilson or Will Fuller. But another big thing is, if we look behind us, 3 out of the 4 teams have already selected a quarterback. So they definitely can't be drafting a second quarterback in this range. At least if it was a real draft, they couldn't. I guess since it's a mock, they can just give me a middle finger and do it regardless. But no, I would say in a real league, you're going to be expecting that Russell Wilson would be available the majority of the time at the 805. And since we have Carson, it's not necessarily a massive deal for us to go out there and for us to actually see him go out there and stack with Russell Wilson. Okay, so Dallas Goedert going. Let's see who is best available across the rest of the league now. Noah Fant is intriguing here. A big thing is, I hate this 709 pick, to be completely honest, with Dallas Goedert. Because here you already took Kyle Pitts at the 404. And if you're looking behind you, I mean, No Capsules has already drafted TJ Hawkinson. Pristine Icon has already drafted Travis Kelce. So you'd really only have to worry about roster baiter possibly taking a tight end. And when you already took Kyle Pitts, I mean, what's the real incentive of going out there and drafting a second guy in Dallas Goedert in a non-tight end premium format? So, my man, I definitely don't like that Dallas Goedert selection. I think if you wanted Goedert, you should have definitely waited until the 804, similar to what we did with deciding to wait until possibly getting Russell Wilson at the 805. So, yeah, I really don't like that pick, to be completely honest, my man. Okay, so if we pull this up real quick. Okay, so now let's go across. Let's see. other quarterbacks that are currently available: Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow. So like I said, we kind of have a couple different stack options here. We could possibly go with Russell Wilson, get Tyler Lockett. We could go with Matthew Stafford, get the Robert Woods stack. Tua Tagovailoa, extremely, extremely late, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's too big of a deal. Now, I really do like that Antonio Brown selection at the 7-12. Great pick there with Antonio Brown. I like how Pristine Icon has built this draft. I don't love the value with Patrick Mahomes at the 3-12, but I mean, that's later than you're really going to see him go in any draft. At the same time, you have Travis Kelce, so you're getting that main stack in there for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So that is a pretty big deal. Now, Roster Baiter does decide to go with Noah Fant, so maybe we're going to see this Dallas Goedert selection. I mean, maybe it wouldn't have made it back to you at the 804. But regardless, I still don't necessarily know if I like that pick. Okay, so let's go check the chat real quick. Colby says, if there's an offense to bet on, it's the Chiefs, but bye week will be a loss. And if they have an injury to the O-line, you'll take a huge hit. Man, you don't necessarily need to be worrying about that with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, if you're drafting a Travis Kelce in the first, if you're drafting a Mahomes in the third, yes, if something happens, I mean, you could potentially lose your league. If Mahomes goes down, yes, you're losing your league. But a big thing that we talk about with stacking all the time is that an average win rate in fantasy is going to be 8.3% if you're playing in a 12-man format. All you're trying to do is you're trying to raise your ceiling, get that up to about a 15 to 20% win rate. And at that point, you would be one of the best fantasy football players on the planet, and you'd be highly profitable playing over a ton of different leagues. Okay, so now if we are up on the clock right now, I think what we actually have to do is we have to probably just take Russell Wilson. I don't love doing so, but we have Tyler Lockett on this team, and in the 805, it is good enough value. At wide receiver, I don't necessarily love any of these players. I think we're going to be looking at similar options once we get to the 9th round. So yeah, this is definitely not one of my favorite drafts. I think that actually our $1,000 high stakes draft where we drafted like wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver in a row, and we didn't have a second running back until like the 11th round with Kenyon Drake. I know everybody hated that because people don't really understand optimal roster construction for different league settings, but I like that draft a whole lot more than I actually like this one, where yeah, we look a little bit more balanced, but I think this team doesn't necessarily have access to the ceiling that we would like to see. I mean, as Eckler, Joe Mixon, Chris Carson at running back. At wide receiver, we have Woods, Lockett, Fuller. At tight end, we have Mark Andrews. And at Russell Wilson, at quarterback, we have Russell Wilson. Trust me, I don't like that much at all. Okay, guys, if you have not already, please go down there, drop a like on the live stream. I see that we just passed 150 likes, which is massive. We only have 300 people watching this, so literally over half of the people watching this live stream right now have dropped a like. And also, if you're watching this as a video later on, please, I know that you weren't able to make it out to the live stream probably because we did it a little too early, but go to the comment section. Give me your opinion on what these picks are doing, because I can read the live chat for everybody who came out right away for the live stream, but I still read those comment sections all the time. I mean, you can notice that I probably reply to your comment if you drop one. So let me know your opinion. Like I said, I'm going to be moving across the country, setting up that new studio over the next few days. So maybe I don't read your comment right away, but I promise you I'll try to get to it. Okay, Andrew says, why did Raheem Mostert drop so low? My man, because Raheem Mostert, I mean, that's a running back that is now a running back 2 on his offense, someone that doesn't have the pass catching upside. I think that Mostert is honestly someone that if I pull up my rankings, we're going to have him significantly lower compared to consensus. I have him as running back 38. There are still running backs available to draft here that I have above Raheem Mostert. Now, I want to give a big thank you to everybody in this mock draft. Not a single person has timed out on a selection. Thank you so much, my dudes. Yeah, guys, Raheem Mostert's a committee running back that literally, I believe we tweeted out that he has had one game in his entire career where he's had over 20 carries. And at the same time, this is a 28-year-old running back. So I'm not valuing a 28-year-old running back who has one game with over 20 carries that highly at all, especially when he's not getting used in the receiving game. I think we would prefer having Trey Sermon, and it wouldn't even be close. Okay, so Melvin Gordon, James Conner going back to back here. I actually do like the value with both of these running backs. A big thing is what happens to Melvin Gordon's fantasy value if he all of a sudden gets traded to LA, because I think that's a real possibility. So that's something to keep our eye on is, I mean, what would happen to both Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, if Melvin Gordon was packing his bags going to LA? And also, what would happen to Darrell Williams? And that's why I'm going to be a little lower on Darrell Williams compared to consensus. Okay, James says, still planning to announce the new Flock Dynasty League on the 25th. Yes, sir, on Patreon, I'm going to be announcing the new Flock Dynasty League on the 25th. A big thing is, usually we do those Patreon startups like once a week, but just because I'm moving across the country, I'm going to have to put a small pause on real Patreon Flock Dynasty Leagues. And a big thing is, we're going to be getting off more 2021 fantasy football Patreon leagues. We are actually about to pass 550 members of the Patreon community. And once we hit 550, what we are doing is we're launching another $500 fantasy league. That's probably going to be announced, I want to say, July 27th, 28th, depending on when we hit 550 Patreon members. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be another giveaway that we do. I'm sure that we're going to have less people interested in this time because it's a $500 league. So, I mean, of course, not that many people are going to be willing to put up that kind of money. Okay, so let me slide this down real quick. Let me see how this stream looks. Everybody can see picks. Okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah, but we have that $500 league coming. That's going to be very fun. So, of course, if you have not already, subscribe to the channel. Okay, so Lil Soup says, can you do a 10-man mock draft? A big thing is, I mean, so many people want to get in these mock drafts. The last thing I want to do is cut it down. I mean, if anything, I'm going to start doing 14-team mock drafts. Maybe when we get closer to the season, I'll do a 10-man league. But yeah, I think for now, I'm still going to continue to try to have as many teams in here as possible, just so as many people can get those reps in, because it's very important to get these mock drafts in. That way you feel comfortable with how the board's going to fall, with how you can construct your roster at different positions going into your real leagues. And we're going to eventually, once we get to the new studio and we get closer to the season, we're going to have a real money live stream every single night with Flock Patreon members. So we're going to be getting a ton of money down on the line. So I want to make sure we're getting as many people in these mock drafts as possible so they feel comfortable dominating their real leagues. Okay, so Zach Moss, Curtis Samuel go at the 901, the 902. So honestly, given the fact that we looked at the wide receiver position and we kind of said that there were going to be wide receiver options that we liked at the 908, I'm glad we took Russell Wilson at the 805, because a lot of these wide receivers that are still on the board are kind of close to these guys that are right here for me. So I'm happy that we took that Russell Wilson selection at the 805. Talon says, Marlon Mack will determine Akers' value. If he can come back and look good, then there's hope for Akers. Otherwise, stay away. My man, I don't know if you messaged me that on Patreon last night, but I was definitely talking with someone on Patreon about that same exact thing. I definitely think we should be using Marlon Mack as a benchmark on what we can potentially expect for Cam Akers. Of course, that matters a whole lot more in Dynasty with his long-term appeal and what he can actually do going out there. Lil Soup says, how do you bet on a dynasty league? Do you win money every year? Yes. So essentially a dynasty league is a fantasy league that happens every single year, but you keep the same team year to year. Now, this is not a dynasty draft, but I mean, we have our dynasty channel, and trust me, I love playing dynasty. But yeah, I mean, it's still yearly dues. It's still a yearly payout. Now, Michael Gallup in the 904, that was definitely the player that we wanted to fall to us at the 908. If I pull up my rankings right now to see where we actually have Michael Gallup, I mean, it looks like Michael Gallup, according to our rankings, was the best player available, and it wasn't even close. We have him as the wide receiver 38. And if we scroll down, the next best available wide receiver is actually our wide receiver 43. Not going to say his name out loud because I definitely want to be seeing if we can get him here at the 908. Okay, people are saying, what are your thoughts on Darnell Mooney? Not a massive fan of Darnell Mooney, especially if you're drafting him here at the 806. I mean, this is a player that if you look at his size-adjusted athleticism, he doesn't necessarily profile to be a field stretching option. Also, he's extremely light. He was drafted, I believe, in the 5th round of this past year's NFL draft class. So I understand a lot of people want to see a good game against Jalen Ramsey and expect that Darnell Mooney is going to be the next coming. And yes, I agree. He'll have better quarterback play this year than what he had last year, but I still don't think he's going to take this next big jump where, I mean, we've already seen Michael Gallup be highly productive in fantasy. He's going to be in a much better passing offense. And at the same time, I understand that he does have some other weapons taking stuff away from him. But with Michael Gallup, I believe that he is a much better talent. Okay, so we have Tyler Boyd, Russell Gage, both going. So that really sucks for what we are going to be looking at because, I mean, Russell Gage was our best available wide receiver. Tyler Boyd was our second best. And now if we scroll through our rankings right now, I mean, we have to go way far down before we can even consider taking anybody else. Maybe Rashad Bateman is our best option. Actually, no. I think that we may end up having to make an adjustment to these rankings because I think based on our rankings right now, we have Rashad Bateman as our favorite player. But with this roster, I think it's a little bit different in that I would prefer to go Rashad Bateman in a league where I was really able to go out and hammer in the wide receiver position early. But actually, I don't think we have Mike Williams available to us. So maybe we do have to go Rashad Bateman. Actually, both the players are gone. We are panicking right now just taking Michael Pittman. I wasn't paying attention well enough to a draft board. Okay, so yeah, Rashad Bateman and Mike Williams, they went way long ago. I thought that they were both still options for us here, so I guess they weren't. And I guess our wide receiver 50, Michael Pittman, was actually the best available player, which is gross to see. I definitely hate how this draft ended up. I thought we were going to get Russell Gage. I thought we were going to get Tyler Boyd or Michael Gallup at the end of the 9th round. It didn't happen. We had that wide receiver run, so we get stuck with Michael Gallup at the 908. Cobley says, I love Gallup in Dynasty. Yes, sir, I love Gallup in Dynasty as well if you look at the contract situation for Amari, as well as the fact that he's playing on the last year of his rookie deal. Not going to keep on talking about Dynasty Fantasy Football, though, because we have our Dynasty channel. We live streamed yesterday, but this is just for 2021 Fantasy Football Leagues. Now, let me scroll up real quick so everybody can see this draft board. Okay, so Ronald Jones at the 9-10. Like I said, we need to see running backs going off the board because we need to hammer in these wide receivers after. Let me hide my screen real quick because after we go Eckler, Mixon, Carson in the first 3 out of 4 rounds of our draft, I mean, we really need to be getting wide receivers later on. I mean, we paid up on tight end. We paid up on quarterback, which I don't necessarily like doing. This is, I'm not going to lie, my least favorite mock draft out of all of them. I know that some people will probably like this more than the other drafts where we completely punted our running back 2. We got a guy at the very top of the draft for running back, and then we just go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. But that's how I like to construct my rosters. Historically, that's been a very good bet if you look over the past 5 years. So this one, we tried something a little bit different given the Cam Akers injury, changing the running back landscape. But yeah, now I think that honestly it did not turn out how we wanted. Okay. So now let's see. I'm just trying to check out the draft board right now to make sure I know who's still available. Okay, so there's a player that I am really hoping falls back to us. But we do have Damian Harris, Raheem Mostert going off the board. And I know a lot of people are going to be screaming that Damian Harris selection is the best value in the draft. I'll get into why it's not a little bit. I think it's fair value, but I know a lot of people think that Damian Harris should be going over these running backs and going closer to Trey Sermon. I'll talk about why he shouldn't later on, but let me focus on who we are going to be drafting right now. Okay, so Mecole Hardman would have been our pick. So if we slide down our rankings, I mean, we're having to go pretty damn far. Gabriel Davis is our next best available player. If he's even available, yes, he is. So we're taking Gabriel Davis here in the 10th round. Not even a massive fan of Gabriel Davis. At least I thought I was lower on him compared to consensus. But a big thing is, with this league, you start 3 wide receivers. You have 2 flex spots. You need that wide receiver depth. You need to have those options you can rely on playing during the bye weeks. So I know a lot of people probably wanted us to go Leonard Fournette. But, I mean, at wide receiver, it's drying up quickly. We need to make sure we get these options coming in. And I like the running backs in this range. I am always the guy to be drafting A.J. Dillon. I mean, if you look at our overall rankings, I have A.J. Dillon way ahead of Gabriel Davis. I think he's a way better value, and that's why I usually like going wide receiver in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, because what it does is it sets you up later on where you can be hammering in those running backs that are an injury away. You can be hammering in Ronald Jones, A.J. Dillon in the 9th, 10th round, and you feel a lot more comfortable with that combination if they're your running back 2 and you're crushing your league mates at wide receiver and flex. So yeah, this is just kind of a trial run here for us to see how this is going without Cam Akers and see if we need to be making any adjustments in those overall rankings. And honestly, I think we were maybe a little too scared that it was going to change the running back landscape value compared to what it actually has. Now, of course, I'm going to have to actually get out another mock draft or 2 before we officially want to set those rankings for our draft guide. So we can't base everything off of one draft, but this is at least the starting point to go. I mean, if you're drastically raising up running backs in your rankings, maybe you're doing something wrong. Okay, so I just see that we are about to pass 200 likes on the live stream. Thank you so much, my dudes, for everybody who's coming out, everybody dropping those likes. Now, let me know what y'all also think about my selection here at the very top of the draft. I think, like we already discussed, my number 1 mistake was going Joe Mixon over DeAndre Hopkins, because while that wasn't necessarily that bad of a pick in the 2nd round, it set us up into being in a very difficult position once we get to rounds 4, 5, 6, because, I mean, in rounds 5, I would have loved to get either Javonte Williams or Kareem Hunt. but we are just in a bad situation because we already had that running back situation on lock, and running back isn't necessarily like wide receiver when you have to start 3 wide receivers. You can't just draft them over and over and over again like we did in our $1,000 fantasy draft that we live streamed the other day. Okay, so we do have those running backs going off the board here. We have Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki going at the same time. Now, I talk about this more in depth on our draft guide that's coming out on the 25th, but I actually prefer having Jonnu Smith over Hunter Henry in fantasy. And I think a big thing is looking at what the New England Patriots did this offseason and what they told us. I mean, they went out of their way. They signed Jonnu Smith before they signed Hunter Henry. They signed Jonnu Smith for more guaranteed money than they signed Hunter Henry. Maybe you can make the argument that Jonnu may be used a little bit more as a blocking tight end, but we don't know yet. So before we know, I think we look at what the team actually thought about the 2 players, and we kind of use that to build our own evaluation of them. And obviously, Jonnu Smith has the athletic profile that Hunter Henry can't really match. Okay, so we do have these running backs and tight ends going in a row here. So I mean, at wide receiver, we've kind of caught up to a point where we don't need to be drafting another one if we don't want. We have 5 guys, which I start to feel comfortable in this range. So maybe if we see an elite handcuff level running back that could step into a 3-down role, similar to when Darrell Henderson was going in this range a while ago, maybe then we make the pivot over and we start taking running backs in this range. And once you commit to a Russell Wilson in the 8th, once you take a Mark Andrews in the 6th, you really can no longer be going out there and you can no longer continue to draft those positions. I mean, you have to make sure that you are getting running backs and wide receivers to backfill. Because I really don't like the idea of drafting Darren Waller here in the 3rd and getting Hunter Henry in the 10th, because I mean, I think what you're doing is, yeah, you're raising your floor in case Darren Waller gets hurt, but you're limiting your ceiling. I would much prefer seeing you go out there and get a Gus Edwards over a Hunter Henry, and then all of a sudden, if J.K. Dobbins tears his ACL tomorrow, you have a pick that is now going to be going in round 5. I mean, we see that Darrell Henderson goes in round 5. I would assume that if you had a J.K. Dobbins injury, Gus Edwards would probably jump up into that same range, maybe even a little higher. So I definitely prefer going running back in this range over a second tight end when you already have an elite tight end. I mean, maybe if you're a team like Dreamville here where you smashed running back and wide receiver to start the draft, then you get to the 10-11 turn and you go, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with my tight end. Let's get 2 of them. Let's figure out who's going to be the starting tight end this upcoming season. Maybe we can play the matchups. At that point, if you want to take Logan Thomas and you want to take Jonnu Smith back-to-back, I'm fine with it. I actually encourage you drafting 2 tight ends with that structure. But a bad thing is when you go through and you invest into Darren Waller in the 3rd, I think taking Hunter Henry in the 10th really doesn't do anything for you. Now, Tony Pollard definitely would have been my favorite running back to draft here at the 11:08. Fantastic pick with him. Now, we are definitely going to be down between 2 running backs that we were staring at. I want to pull up my rankings right now. I know they are in the same tier, but I want to make sure that we have everything correct. So yeah, right now we do have Jamal Williams as running back 42 in tier 12. We have Latavius Murray as running back 44 in tier 12 as well. So we are going to be going with Jamal Williams. A big thing with Jamal Williams is, if I can find him real quick, is this is someone that you're expecting to get touches on a week-to-week basis. And no, you're not planning on starting him based on those touches. But if anything were to happen to DeAndre Swift, then all of a sudden he vaults up into being a 3-down role. And I understand it's a very bad offense, but at the same time, you're getting him in the 11th round. I do like that value. I would definitely prefer having Tony Pollard or Gus Edwards in much better offenses over Jamal Williams. But I think at this point, we're fine with Williams in the 11th. And let's go through another mistake that I clearly made in this draft. And y'all know that I am so transparent. Whenever I see a mistake, I want to make sure we're highlighting it, not only so I can hold myself accountable and continue to improve as we lead up into the season, as we put more money into fantasy leagues, but at the same time, because I don't want someone to watch this live stream and go, well, the idiot Mason did it. I mean, maybe it's a good idea, because no, like I say all the time, I'm an idiot. And that's why I encourage you to leave your comments telling me what I do wrong down there in the comment section, because I want us to all be working together and talking about this out loud, because I think we can get to a better result. But here, the massive mistake that I made was taking Gabriel Davis in the 10th, because between Gabriel Davis and Paris Campbell, I have them very close in our rankings. As at the running back position, I was maybe focusing in too much on streaming, maybe focusing in too much on just filling out this roster. I mean, we could have gotten A.J. Dillon in the 10th, and then instead we could have gone through and we could have decided to draft I mean, we could have gotten A.J. Dillon in the 10th instead of Gabriel Davis, and then Paris Campbell in the 11th instead of Jamal Williams. And I would definitely prefer the combination of A.J. Dillon and Paris Campbell compared to Gabriel Davis and Jamal Williams. So that is a big time mistake by me. I want to highlight that. And it looks like we are in a point of the draft where I'm going to have to hide my screen real quick so everybody can see what exactly is going on. But yeah, guys, please, if you have not already, drop a like on the stream. It helps us out so much. We just passed 200 likes. That is absolutely massive. Okay, so I see people saying, is Cole Beasley going to play this upcoming year? I simply don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not Cole Beasley's cousin or something. I can't have access to talking to him. But I will say, I think taking him here in the 11th is definitely a little too rich for us. I would personally prefer going out there and getting someone like Paris Campbell, getting someone like Marvin Jones over him. Okay, Lil Soup says Chubb or Jonathan Taylor. We're going to go with Jonathan Taylor there because we've seen Jonathan Taylor get the usage in the receiving game that Nick Chubb simply hasn't had in games where Kareem Hunt has been active. Okay, so now that we are up on the clock again, this is why I really didn't want to take Russell Wilson in the 8th round, and this is why I encourage y'all, every live stream that I'm in, if I say something about taking a quarterback in rounds 6, 7, and 8, you literally virtually slap me through the live stream. Tell me that I am the dumbest person on the planet and I need to be waiting, because here we could be getting a Tom Brady, a Trevor Lawrence in the 12th instead. And now instead we're going to be taking a bum running back. So please make sure you're holding me accountable to no longer drafting those guys at the very top. And if we pull this up right now, maybe Todd Gurley becomes a little bit more intriguing given the fact that you have him in a spot where he could sign with LA. But instead, I think we're just going to end up drafting Alexander Mattison as a 3-down handcuff that could potentially get usage if anything happened to Dalvin Cook. Okay, so let's go out there. And now that we're past that, I guess we can show our video again. And at the end of the stream, I'll definitely go down there and I'll definitely pull everything down so you can take a screenshot. You can look at the board exactly how it lined up. But let's just get through these rounds first before I show off the entire board. But yeah, guys, you definitely have to go with Chubb over, you definitely have to go with Jonathan Taylor over Nick Chubb. I understand the elite talent that Nick Chubb actually is, but at the same time, I think Jonathan Taylor in a PPR format is going to easily be out-targeting him on a per-game basis. Okay, so now John Brown going at the 1207. Let me see what wide receivers are available, because I can guarantee you, yeah, I mean, Terrace Marshall still available. I definitely prefer taking the upside in a Terrace Marshall over a John Brown. I know that John Brown's probably going to see a decent amount of snaps this upcoming year. It's really only competing with Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards for the wide receiver position. But at the same time, I think you take the upside with the Terrace Marshall, and I honestly don't even think you look twice about it. Okay, so Trevor Lawrence at the 1209. So yeah, I love this quarterback value. I mean, you get Jalen Hurts in the middle of the 11th round. This is the problem with me taking these quarterbacks. I fall for it every single draft. I mean, we see a Kyler Murray in the 6th in the $1,000 league. And I go, okay, well, we need Kyler Murray in the 6th. That's great value. No, it's bad value when you can get these quarterbacks later on. And I say it in every draft, and I literally fall for it every single time. And that's why it's at this point, it's out of my hands. I can't help myself. It's on y'all. It is literally on y'all. If I draft another quarterback in rounds 6, 7, and 8, it's because it's you. It's because it's your fault. You didn't hold me accountable. So yeah, Russell Wilson in the 8th, I don't like, and I'm blaming this one on y'all because I've told y'all to not let me do it. Jack says, is it bad to have a running back and wide receiver from the same team? It's not great. I definitely didn't go out there and I did not target Tyler Lockett after drafting Chris Carson. He was naturally just the highest wide receiver in my rankings. Possibly we should have gone down a little bit and just taken a Deontay Johnson. So I don't necessarily like having running backs and wide receivers on the same team, even though we love building in stacks and correlation. Maybe you can say we're just betting on the Seattle Seahawks offense to be more high paced with Shane Waldron coming in at offensive coordinator. But I don't necessarily love it. I will say that. Now, Terrace Marshall at the end of the 12th round, I do like that value. So if we go through, let's just scroll through the top players available based on ADP so everybody can see them at the bottom of the screen. And also a big thing, guys, is I am actually going to have to start packing up to move across the country. I've already done a lot of packing, but I'm going to have to be like packing up the mic, packing up the computer, probably around 5 p.m. today. So if you're over there on Patreon and you recently have joined and you want me to get a podcast out of your team, I mean, I do those the same day, literally every single time you sign up, unless you sign up at like 12 p.m. I'm sorry, like 11 p.m. So please shoot me a DM ASAP so I can get that podcast recorded for you about 3 p.m. I can get it out on Patreon. If not, if you wait until you shoot me that team tonight, then I'm going to have to wait until we get to the new studio, which will be on the 24th, 25th, when we'll have everything set up, just because I'll be traveling across the country. I'm not going to be making podcasts in the car. Okay, so it looks like some people in the chat saying they like the Madison pick. Yeah, Madison was my highest ranked running back, and I think at this point we just kind of go through and we just kind of take those handcuff type running backs. Kieran coming out, have not seen you in forever. Says, been a while, drop a like, keen for the season, bro. Holy, how do you actually rate Najee? Number one Steelers fan, be nice, keen for the season, brother. Man, thank you so much for coming out. I know that you were in the live streams literally almost every single night last season. I hope we see you out in the live streams again. I'm going to be starting the live stream once we get to the new studio, most likely at the beginning of August. We're going to do that every single night, but we're not going to just be answering questions in those live streams. We'll be doing a real vlog Patreon startup drafts and regular drafts. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, with Najee Harris, a big thing is you're expecting him to be a running back that comes in and automatically sees 300 touches this upcoming season. And a big thing that I think people discount with Najee Harris, let me hide my screen real quick so everybody can see what's happening around this draft. A big thing that people discount with him is actually his passing down ability. If you look at the amount of targets that he was able to get his senior season at Alabama, he actually had a higher college target share than Travis Etienne. College target share at the running back position, we approved in our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide over there on Patreon. Historically, it has been it's been a very good indicator of actually trying to figure out what running backs can catch passes at the NFL level. So because of this and because of his size, you're expecting Najee Harris to automatically be a bell cow running back that's getting usage and going to be a good passing down running back at the same time. But a big problem is the Pittsburgh Steelers should have a bottom 5 offensive line this upcoming season, and we don't necessarily know what the arm talent's going to allow this Pittsburgh Steelers team to realize their overall potential if Ben Roethlisberger can't hold up that elbow. So yeah, it's kind of contingent on the overall offense. I don't like betting on that offense for this upcoming season, but at the same time, I mean, Najee Harris definitely has the talent profile. He's 23 years old as well, so you should be expecting him to be able to at least be pro ready. If he's not pro ready, he's going to have a problem. Okay, so let's pull up these wide receivers real quick. And do we possibly just take Nelson Agholor knowing that he's going to be an every down player for the New England Patriots? If you're drafting Agholor, I mean, you're not necessarily hoping that Cam Newton's starting any more than 3 games this upcoming year. I know we're kind of going down the rankings slightly, but we're actually going to be going with Tre'Quan Smith. A big thing with Tre'Quan Smith is he's going to be an every down player for the New Orleans Saints. And if we actually do have Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints for the foreseeable future, I mean, you're going to have Tre'Quan Smith as a high upside wide receiver. Bryan Edwards probably would have been the better pick if we were actually looking back on it, but that's kind of what happens when you're not looking at your rankings and you're just going through and you are having to live stream at the same time. Okay, so yeah, let's wait until this draft ends and then we'll go through, make sure everybody gets a screenshot of the final board, because I believe this is the first mock draft with no Cam Akers and you have Darrell Henderson going at the 506. I think that's actually a little too early for Darrell Henderson. I would prefer having Javonte Williams, Kareem Hunt over him, but I'm actually expecting him to go higher than this in the majority of the drafts. So I'm probably going to be lower on Darrell Henderson than most people. So now let's switch this over. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out and hanging out in the live stream. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them to me on Patreon at any time. And if you have recently joined Patreon and you want me to break down a dynasty team, if you want me to break down a mock draft you've recently done, please send me a DM very soon, because I'm going to be dealing with all that. I'm going to be getting those podcasts out today, but around 5 p.m., I'm going to have to shut everything down. I'm going to have to go full on packing mode to prepare for our move across the country. And to go along with that, if you shoot me a DM on Patreon on either the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, and I take a couple days to get back to you, please understand why. I'm literally traveling across the country. I'm having to move everything in my current apartment to a new one. And I know that usually on Patreon, we get back to you within the hour, but that's not going to be the case for the upcoming 3 days. So please understand that. And yeah, thank you again for everybody coming out to the draft. I hope that this helped you at all with trying to understand what's going to happen after the Cam Akers injury. But yeah, thank you again and have a great day, my dudes.